I wrote a book about cycles, and that's the one where I refer to my experience traveling in India. And cycles are induced primarily by behavior. By, the upcycle is exaggerating, overgeneralizing. The upcycle, there's a trend line. Let's say it's GDP growth. There's a trend line. But sometimes the economy grows more than that. Why? Largely, I think, because of optimism. Because people are optimistic, so they spend a lot of money. Producers are optimistic about demand for their products, so they build new factories and hire labor and buy machinery. And the sum of these things produces a period of above-trend growth. But then, when producers have more than prepared for the coming growth, and consumers have been sated by consumption, then things will ease off, and maybe it results in a period of below average growth. So, I wrote the book. I was about 2/3 through writing the book, and I've been studying cycles for almost 60 years now, living through cycles. And I said to myself, why do we have cycles? Why doesn't GDP, if the average growth in GDP is 2, why isn't it always 2? Why is it 3 or 4 or 1 or 0 or -1? And the answer is excesses and corrections. And then you go to a negative, which is an excess, and then it corrects back to the trend line. So rather than thinking of cycles as ups and downs, which I think most people do, think of them as excesses and corrections, excesses and corrections. Fluctuations around the trend line. I mean, this is most easily seen in the stock market, for example. You look at the S&P 500. The S&P 500 has returned about 10% a year on average for the last 100 years. But my point is that the S&P, however constituted, has returned an average of 10% a year for the last 100 years. But not steadily. In the 90s, it returned 20% a year. And in the aughts, it returned 0 per year. So certainly not steady. And not only is that an interesting phenomenon to think about, but even more so, the fact that the return on the S&P, which averages 10, is almost never between 8 and 12. This is a very interesting datum. Why is it that the norm is not the average?